When you hop in your car, there's this feeling you probably take for granted. You grab the steering wheel, you turn it, and the car just goes where you want. It's this direct physical connection that's been at the heart of driving for more than 100 years. Well, believe it or not, that entire experience is about to get a massive rewrite.
So let's just start with a wild question. What if that connection just wasn't there? What if turning your steering wheel was more like using a super advanced video game controller? Sending digital signals instead of actually twisting a long metal pole. And no, this isn't some far-off sci-fi thing. It's a real technology called steer-by-wire, and honestly, it's probably the biggest shakeup in steering we've seen in our lifetimes. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at how they actually sever that physical link. Then we'll dive into how this new digital system actually works. We'll talk about the driving experience, what it really feels like. We'll ask why car makers are even making this switch. And, of course, we have to tackle the big one, is it safe? And finally, we'll peek into what this all means for the future of driving. Okay, let's get right into the most mind-bending part of this whole thing. The idea of literally cutting the cord between your hands and the wheels, moving from a mechanical world to a digital one. For basically as long as cars have been around, this is how it's worked. You turn the wheel, it turns a big metal rod, the steering column, and that connects to a set of gears that physically push and pull the wheels left and right. It's direct, it's mechanical, it's the way it's always been done. Now, take a look at the new way. With steer-by-wire, that entire physical column, it's just gone. And what's missing is actually the whole point. Instead of that mechanical link, you've got sensors that read how you turn the wheel, and that info is shot as an electronic signal by wire to a motor that does all the turning for you. And looking at them side by side like this, it really tells the whole story, doesn't it? We're going from this complicated chain of metal parts to a much cleaner, simpler electronic system. It's a huge leap, like going from a typewriter to a computer, but it's all happening right under your car's hood. So, how does this whole digital conversation actually happen? Well, it's basically a four-step dance. First, you give the input. You turn the wheel. Sensors immediately measure the angle and how much force you're using. Second, a little computer processes that signal, also looking at how fast you're going. Third, it sends an output command to a powerful electric motor down on the steering rack, and that motor turns the wheels. And finally, and this is so important, a totally separate motor sends feedback to the steering wheel in your hands, giving you that feeling of resistance, so it doesn't just feel like a dead stick. All right, that's the techie stuff. But what you really want to know is, what does it feel like? I mean, you're driving a car with no physical connection to the front wheels. Does it feel weird? Disconnected? You might be surprised. In a test drive of one of these new Mercedes prototypes, the engineer actually described the feeling as lazier. Now, that sounds bad, right? But he meant it as the highest praise possible. He was talking about just how little physical work you have to do. And this really gets to the heart of it. With traditional steering, especially in a big car, it can be a workout. You're shuffling your hands, making big movements, especially when you're trying to park. Steer-by-wire, though, it's a completely different world. It's almost effortless. It's more of a point-and-go feeling. A little flick of the wrist is enough for a tight turn. And here's the crazy part, the real paradox. Even though you're doing way less work, the car actually feels sharper, more connected, more responsive. The system reacts so fast that the front end just feels incredibly agile. It's almost like the car starts turning before you've even fully had the thought. But what about lag? Digital lag. It's a totally fair question. But the response time here is about 1 millisecond. In fact, the engineers will tell you it's actually faster than a mechanical system, which has all these tiny little delays built into it from all the metal and rubber parts flexing. A digital signal? There's just no slack. It's instant. So, okay, it feels great to drive. It's lightning fast. But what's the big picture here? Why are companies like Mercedes-Benz pouring so much money into this and calling it a key part of the future? Well, the reasons are absolutely huge. First and foremost, you can't really have self-driving cars without it. The car's computer needs a way to steer, and this is the perfect way. But it's so much more than that. Getting rid of that giant steering column frees up a ton of space inside the car. Think about new interior designs, maybe even steering wheels that can fold away into the dashboard. On top of that, the system is lighter, it's more power efficient, and it can filter out all those annoying little vibrations you feel from bumpy roads. And you get this amazing ability to have variable steering. So small turns are all you need for parking, but on the highway, it becomes much more stable and less twitchy. It's a game changer. And don't just take my word for it. Marcus Schaefer, who's the chief technology officer over at Mercedes-Benz, puts it perfectly. He says this isn't just some new gimmick. He calls it another big step towards the mobility of tomorrow. This tech is really a foundational building block for what cars are about to become.
Okay, it's amazing, it's futuristic, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the question on everyone's mind. With no physical backup, is this thing actually safe?
Right? It's the first thing you think of. If it's all electronic, what happens if something fails? If the power goes out, do you just lose all control and start coasting into whatever's in front of you? The entire philosophy behind making this safe comes down to one single, incredibly important word: redundancy. It's a core engineering principle that just means you have backups for your backups for your backups. The goal is to have no single point of failure. And this is where the engineering is just brilliant. Think of it like a multi-layer safety net. You've got two completely separate signal paths and two motors. There's a totally separate backup power supply just for the steering system. And even if, in some 1 in a billion chance, all of that fails, the car still has other tricks. The rear axle steering can give you some control, and as a final, last-ditch resort, the stability control system can actually brake individual wheels to gently steer the car to a safe stop. And look, this isn't just theory on a whiteboard. These automakers are testing the daylights out of these systems. Mercedes-Benz alone has already logged over 1 million test kilometers on their system, just to make sure it's as bulletproof as it can possibly be. So when you pull all of this together, the feel, the massive benefits, and the layers of safety, it becomes really clear that this isn't just a small update. It's a fundamental shift. And if you look at the history of the automobile, this all makes perfect sense. We went from basic steering in the 1890s to power steering in the 50s, making things easier, to modern electric steering, improving efficiency. Now we've got rear axle steering for agility. Steer-by-wire, which Mercedes says is coming to production cars in 2026, is just the next logical step in that long line of innovation. And all of this leaves us with one last, really fascinating thought to chew on. Once cars can truly drive themselves, and that steering wheel is no longer a mechanical requirement but just another digital input, what does it even become? Is it something that just tucks away into the dashboard when you're not using it? Does it change shape? This technology doesn't just change how we steer our cars. It could change the entire idea of what it means to be in the driver's seat. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. I hope you learned something new.